Hi, folks. So I want to talk about, I'd like to talk about uh, overwhelmment and making space, and how the two go hand in hand. I'd like to use my laptop as an analogy, and I think it's something that an analogy that we could all, that relates to us in our own lives with our technology, or whether whether you only have a cell phone or something like that. And that's in regards to the fact that we have a limited amount of space to store all the information, okay? And we're downloading all the time, we're receiving all the time. And for myself, more so because I don't have a bandwidth, unlimited amount of bandwidth. I only get 4 gigs a month. And so what I do is I generally will go to a place where there's fast internet, wireless, and I'll just download all my YouTube videos, all my lectures, all my podcasts, sometimes movies, sometimes TV series, and whatever it is. Okay? And so for myself, and I'm also making videos, which takes up a lot of space. My space runs out quite quickly. Now, I know for a lot of you folk out there, you have plenty of space, that it doesn't necessarily hinder you in this way because you're streaming a lot of the time. Okay, so it's maybe only this analogy is only relating to some, but I think everybody can understand it, right? Or you understand in your cell phone that you got unnecessary photos, you got unnecessary music, or that don't serve anything, or videos, or things that you've just received, that you've downloaded, programs that you're running, apps that are going on, whatever it is, that are possibly slowing down your phone. Or not only that, but when you on your phone, it's overwhelming because there's a whole lot of these programs, apps, pictures, music, podcasts, whatever it is, perhaps that you've downloaded that you don't need anymore. Contact numbers in your directories, whatever, etc., that you don't need. Friends on Facebook. I don't know. You probably got 80% more friends that that you're friendly with than you need to be. On YouTube, you probably have 80% more people that you've subscribed to, unless you're very vigilant, you're very diligent in what you do. You got an abundance of information coming in. Okay, so it can be obviously what you have on your hard drive and what you are connected to online as well. How much data influx is going on. Anyway, so for myself, I often run out of data. I run out of space. And so I need to delete files. And it's always a bittersweet for me because I have to say goodbye to certain podcasts, movies, documentaries, music, and whatever it is that I don't need. And it's hard because it's hard to say what you keep and what you don't keep. It's like, I don't know, I remember one of my grandparents when they passed away that they had all these photos, and we're thinking, what should we keep? Should we keep the photos, or is anyone going to be even interested in the photos today? Like, really? Or an old magnifying glass, or an old watch or something like that the battery didn't even work, but it's memorable. So you want to keep those memories, but then you become a hoarder, right? As well. So it's hard to let things go. And so for myself on my computer, it's hard to let things go. All right. But I got to do it to make space. Otherwise, what's happening is that there's too much coming in. There's too much new stuff. There's too much more pictures, more music coming in. Let's just say TV series, documentaries. Not that I'm into much TV series, really. I watch maybe few a year. Certain movies, lectures, YouTube videos, and it's all coming in, and I'm just getting overwhelmed, and I have no space for it. And I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling anxious already about the influx of new information constantly. And so what I'm saying is that it's not helping me, or it's not helping anybody, when our hard drives are chock full. And what I mean by hard drives, I'm also saying our psyche, our psychology, right, is chock full of things that have happened in the past, right, and that we haven't yet resolved, and so it's still sitting within our psyche, and it's still weighing heavy on our hearts, and it won't it won't get deleted until you made use of what we've needed to make. I think that's what the psyche does in a way. It holds on to certain memories, wounds, traumas, whatever it might be, in order because they haven't been emotions, it hasn't been processed yet, it hasn't been utilized. So when it hasn't been utilized, it sits there. It's like fat in the body when you're overweight and you haven't worked, you haven't burnt you don't need that fat. It just sits there dormant until you need it, or until you burn it off. Okay? And that's how it works. And so I think the psyche works the same way. It holds on to things that you weren't conscious of at a certain time, but now that you are conscious of, and that now you can reflect on. So it holds that in reserve. And what I'm saying is that, like, I was just doing a meditation this morning and realizing how much I am holding in reserve, willingly and unwillingly, consciously and unconsciously. And things, it's mostly more emotions. It's mostly more, emotions, I suppose, and awareness and insight of things that have happened. The story of my life, perspective on my life, a whole lot of perspective on my life, what my journey's been about. And a lot of the time, the struggles that I've encountered or still encountering. Okay, so now let's move to this point of what I'm trying to say. Okay, let's just see how the battery life is doing here. I'm so unprepared with these talks. I'm ready. This camera, I need to upgrade. We could also talk about this. Talk could also be about upgrading, in a sense. And so, whatever. So, right, coming back. So for myself, I realized, again, it's a bittersweet. I realized I was lying in bed, and I've been living in my own Truman Show, and we've all been living in our own specific Truman Show world. Let's just say Truman Show. And what I'm saying is that all I've met is actors. I've really only met the actors of the Truman Show. I haven't met anybody who is trying to, especially more males. I don't know why. It was a male energy for myself this morning. I was thinking of all the people that I've met, like in my own personal life, whether they be shamans, which I've only met a few so-called shamans. I've met gurus. I've met healers, whether it might be Reiki healers, muscle memory healers, all different types of healers, people that are in sort of the conscious community or more conscious, and men of all ages, and how I've never really found somebody who I could feel that I was on the same page with, that I felt that they were grounded. Most men that I have found in my life, whether they've been yoga teachers or whatever it is, just conscious or in diets, I've really never found in my own personal somebody that's really grounded, that I could find fellowship with, that I could build a relationship with. And maybe sometimes I want to say that I'm being a bit more of an older soul, and therefore I'm a little bit more grounded, I'm a bit more reasonable, I'm a little bit more matured than your average Joe, and even more so in people that are also taking psychedelics. And I've met people that have taken 10 grams, 10 mushroom trips of 10 grams, even more than that, and yet I've spoken to them and they just seems that they haven't integrated the experiences that, right, we both living on the fringe of society, or we both different kind of people, but yet I couldn't relate to this person. I didn't feel a warmth, I didn't feel a hospitality, I didn't feel a connection with them. I felt like maybe this was only some part of their life, that they've taken mushroom trips and done ayahuasca and even gone to other places to Brazil, Argentina more so, to different Amazonian rainforests to meet. They've done retreats, they've done like raw diets for like 30 days, and they've done meditation for, they've done a course of 50 hours of meditation, like 2 hours a day. And yet I've met them, and yet there was nothing for myself that I could really look at this person and feel wowed by, in a sense of like, you've integrated this, we're on this journey together, what can you teach me, what can you show me? Like, I felt like I could show me really nothing. Like, I could show me nothing. They could give me advice on nothing, really. And I'm talking about men in their 60s, in their 70s, guys that were living on sustainable farms, permaculture, whatever, but their lives were a wreck. They were chain smokers, And I mean, there's nothing wrong with chain smoking, but like big drinkers, and I'm saying, and yet like sort of in the conscious community or something like that. I've met guys with dreadlocks, with third eye tattoos, with, you know, kundalini energy tattooed on their bodies or whatever it is, and yet they could teach me nothing, right? And so coming back, I don't, you know, how this is relating, is that I've had it that I've had no male figures in my life, again, it was more of a male figure in my life to seek guidance from, seek support from, seek leadership from. It always felt for myself, and I should honor this, you know, I should feel good about this, that I always felt like I was 10 steps ahead of every other male that I've met in my life. I was more skilled at certain times, I was more reasonable, I was more grounded, I was more rational, and whatever it is, than any other male that I've met in my life. On the spiritual journey, on the non-spiritual journey, conscious journey, whatever you want to call it. And so for myself, what does that mean in my life? And this became a big perception reality for me. I saw myself, you know, within this narrative and in the story of Aaron, who's been traveling on this journey for 38 years with not one male in the flesh, I'm saying in my close proximity, that I can say I would have traveled, you know, with, you know, if they lived in another city or, you know, I would have moved there. That I would have really been knocking at their door every single day until I could have a kingship with them, a friendship with them, or something or other. I have, let's see how much time we've been chatting here for. It seems to be going on for quite a bit. Only 11 minutes. Not bad. Well, almost 12. So, that I have felt, yeah, not one. And so I got this big picture, and I was imagining telling the story like to somebody on another planet, or to, let's say, my grandchildren one day. Not that I'm going to have children in this life, I don't think. But, you know, something like that, and reflecting on my story, sitting and saying, well, I have it, and that reality, and then I realized, wow, and how heavy that has been. How really heavy that has been. And I'm just talking about male energy. Only how heavy that has been, like really, how many, I've spoken about this before, how many people I've come across, how many people I've met, whatever, and yet nobody. And then I also think to myself, oh, well, it's also the fact that I live in South Africa. If I lived in America, my chances were probably a lot higher. If I lived in India, my chances would probably be a lot higher. Like there's no speakers coming here, you know. I mean, Terence McKenna once came to South Africa for a moment in a place called Rustlers Valley where I lived. I moved there for a year and a half in the country to try and find like-minded individuals, and there was nothing, niks, as we say in Afrikaans. I mean, but he came in the 90s, right? And it, whatever it was, and then it died out. Anyway, so so no speakers come here. There's no Jordan Peterson coming here. There's no Dr. Gabriel Matea coming here. Whatever. There is no one's coming to South Africa. Not even singers. Not even, you know, conscious singers or whatever it is. Nobody comes here. So I look at my story in South Africa and say, okay, this is a country, third world country. This is who I haven't met. It's been a desert for myself. Anyway, so that comes up for me, and there's a lot of emotion that comes up with me, a lot of the struggle that comes up with me, and I need to, again, what I'm doing is that I'm going into the memory, I'm going into the emotion, I'm going into the story in order to let it go. I'm utilizing it, I'm processing it, so I can, you know, feel it, experience it, and then let it go, learn from it, let it teach me, you know, honor it, and then let it go. Cleaning, making space. Purifying, making space. This is one example. Making space. Because what I find generally in our lives today, I'm generally overwhelmed, I would say, majority of the time. Majority of the time I'm terribly overwhelmed. Okay? It's just there's so many factors to it, like I've said. We're living on the cusp of information overload, of data influx, energy influx, growth influx. Everything is firing on all cylinders. It's pedal to the metal. It's overwhelming. Healing on a astronomical, profound level. There's so much going on, right, that it's overwhelming. The country that I live in is overwhelming. The security aspect of this country is overwhelming. The other day somebody jumped over my wall and stole the copper piping from my geyser I'm renting, and they ran away with it. And I mean, that changes things. When somebody jumps over your wall to steal something that's worth maybe $8, okay, then you realize the desperation of the place that you're living in and what lies beyond your walls, your high walls of where you live. The fact that this country's plummeting, that the economy's on a downward spiral, the world is on a downward spiral, right? All this information that's going on. So what is necessary? How do we make space? And how do we, because this needs to be another talk as well, on how do we navigate with all this data and information going on. But for now, how fast am I talking here, folks? For now, what I'm saying is that internally, what needs to be spring cleaned, what needs to be let go of, to make space of. And again, this is very hard because it's a bittersweet. I know I'm coming up with so much perceptions that I don't want to let go of chips on my shoulders that I don't want to let go of, right? But I'm needing to heal them. There's bitterness in me that I need to heal in order to let go, so I can open the heart space and receive what's to come, right? To receive more of the light, I suppose, the expansion, if you will. Okay, the expansiveness of heart and letting that in. And I can't let that in if I've got chips on my shoulders. But it's hard to let those chips on my shoulders go, because I've had such a hard go. And I feel like I need to be in such protective mode. I feel like if I let certain anger go, I'll feel vulnerable. If I forgive certain things and I surrender to certain things, in my life and people or whatever to certain degrees, that I'm making myself vulnerable. So there's a lot going on here, folks, but it's a bittersweet, isn't it? But it needs to be done. The cleansing needs to happen. Space needs to be made. And it's very difficult when it comes into regards with wounds. Wounding is a big one because, you want vengeance, you want justice, you feel victimized, and you're saying, well, you can't afford to because you need to heal this. And so you need to surrender. You need to humble yourself. It's very, very difficult to do that. Through what you've gone through, the traumas that you've been through, the abuse that you've gone through, the neglect that you've been through, the abandonment that you've been through, the suppression that you've been through, the psychological indoctrination that you've been through, your isolation that you've been through, whether it's been from what you feel as man, your family, or spirit, or God, or nature. Right? How you've been disowned, how you've been abandoned, how you've been rejected, how you've had to fight on, be whatever it might be. How you've been unjustified, how you've arrived on a planet in such a mess, and it's your job to fix it up to a certain degree. I'm saying within your environment. So a lot of this and all of this, and so that's going on. And I need to make a part 2 on this, but a cleansing, folks, a releasing, a processing, to make space for the new, and therefore we don't get too overwhelmed. Need to do another talk on this, folks, but I'm running out of time on this camera, so we'll end up on that for now. I hope I've made a bit of sense. Thank you for taking the time. We'll chat soon. Take care.